the longer you practice and grow your spirituality, the more you realize that spirituality is one big contradiction. And I think that's why it's so controversial and doubted, because when you have something like science, which is really just the observation and study and recording of life, right? Biology is literally the study of life. Science happens when I make an observation about the world. I come to a conclusion about what this might mean. I do experiments to test that hypothesis. And if my hypothesis is correct enough times, it becomes a theory. It becomes something that is sound. It becomes something that I believe. It becomes something that I expect. It becomes something that I trust. And so there's a certain level of, I can see it, I can taste it, I can touch it, I can feel it, I can hear it, I can observe it. It is very difficult to not believe something when I can see it, I can taste it, I can touch it, you know? So when you have something like spirituality is abstract. Spirituality in astrology would be most powerfully associated with Sagittarius and Pisces. Both of those signs, ruled by Jupiter, are mutable. And that means they are changeable. They're shiftable. Spirituality is something that always grows. Spirituality is something that you're always going to be able to gain a deeper perspective. You're always going to be able to establish a higher perspective. You're always going to grow and evolve and change, and it's unlimited, right? So the reason why we're having this conversation is because I really contradicted myself within a past, like a couple of the previous episodes. I think in season 3, I was on one. And I was going off about Patrick Mahomes. Is that even his fucking name? I don't care. He really is my mortal enemy. Do you guys have a random one-sided celebrity beef that like is very fucking serious for you? For me, my one-sided celebrity beef like is with Patrick Mahomes. I feel towards Patrick Mahomes the way that, is it Family Guy? How they have like a bit where it's like Peter and the fucking chicken. Every single time they see each other on sight immediately. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about Patrick Mahomes. Like, no, we're beefing, okay? It is one-sided, but it's valid for me. Anyway, so I was on one and I was talking about Patrick Mahomes and his stupid comments about his nappy head of hair, which we don't have time, don't take the bait, don't even go there. And I was talking about how if I was his ancestors, his entire career would be, if I was one of his ancestors, his entire career and his entire life would be blown up, right? Of course, that doesn't appear to be happening. I don't know. I don't keep up with Patrick Mahomes. I feel like Timmy Turner's dad and Dinkelberg. I don't think about him, but when he does come into my awareness, that's how I feel. Dinkelberg. Just irritating me. Just irritating my spirit. Anyway. So, what was I talking about? Patrick Mahomes. I was on one. I was saying all of the things, right? If it was my family, what I would do as an ancestor for my descendants. For me, being pro-Black is something that is incredibly important. It is a part of my core value. Like, my core values, being Black, being pro-Black, being pro freedom and liberation and justice and equity. That is such a huge part of my personality, who I am on a soul level. Everybody else doesn't have that. And so the rules that I create for myself and the rules that I create for my family and the rules that I create for the lineage that comes after me is going to be rooted in my pro-Black agenda. The woke mind virus. I will be passing it on. So that's my personal opinion and my personal perspective. In the last episode that I did, I talked about the idea of that heaven versus hell thinking and the story that I observed a woman sharing, which was basically like, you did a bad thing. You dated a boy that you don't need to be dating. So I'm going to fuck up your whole apartment until you get it together. And I talked about how I don't believe in that and I don't subscribe to that. I don't tell the story, oh my God, a negative thing is happening in my life. I'm being punished for something. Because that's not the relationship that I have with my spirit guides or my angels or my ancestors. And so maybe when I was talking about Patrick Mahomes, maybe I actually have to sit and reflect on what I really meant. Was I really just speaking metaphorically? And was I really just trying to express how vile and disgusting I find that comment to be? And the best way to articulate and to describe how much that anti-Black bullshit disturbs me, the best way that I could describe that is by saying, if I was his ancestors, then his entire career would be blown to smithereens. Because that's fucking crazy. And the reason why I said that in that way and the reason why it's ancestral is because, no, I don't think that you're really gifted at football because of the genes and the DNA and the gifts and the talents and the skills that you got from your white mother. I'm sorry. I don't care. Controversial take. Can Naked and Noisy season 4 actually be what the title of the fucking episode is supposed to be? No, I'm sorry. I don't think. I don't think that you inherited that skill. I'm not saying that white people can't be good at sports and blah, 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 blah. I'm saying in this particular case, in this particular instance, I do not think that the gifts and abilities that have supported Patrick Mahomes in getting this far in his career come from his white ancestry. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying white guys can't ball. I'm not saying blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that. In this particular instance, in this particular case, we inherit things from our parents and our family and all of that. And I'm going to talk more about that in a second. But it's important to me because when Patrick Mahomes makes an anti-Black comment, he's saying, I don't want to be Black. I hate being Black. And if you don't want to be Black and you hate being Black, give it all back. Amen. It rhymed, so it's true. If you don't want to be Black and you hate being Black, give it all back. Everything. The hair, the talent, everything. The characteristics, the personality. every single thing that you have received from your ancestors, not just on a spiritual sense, but in a genetic sense, give it all back. Because you don't want to be Black. That's the conversation. That's what I was trying to express. Do I realistically think if 100 years from now, my children some way, somehow ended up being anti-Black, that they would lose everything? I'm saying I can't even fucking imagine that happening. I'm saying I literally cannot even imagine that happening. I can't say realistically what I feel that I would do as an ancestor because I can't imagine that happening. What I will say is that my intention does stand. Okay, here, let me say this. Yes, I am the generational curse breaker and wealth builder of my family line. I love it. Honor of my lifetime. So wonderful. I am not just building a business and building money just to have money. I am not just building a business just to have a successful business. Everything that I do is done with purpose and intention. And so the idea that a business and wealth that I've created so deliberately and intentionally could then somehow end up in the hands of someone who is anti everything that I stand for, you start using the money that you have inherited from me, that I have passed on to you, in good faith that you will be a good person, and you decide some way, somehow, I can't imagine it, but some way, somehow you decide to be a piece of shit. Yeah. 110%. You got to feel that. And there's a difference between an ancestor and a spirit guide. And I want to talk about that. Am I ready to talk about that in this part of the episode? Yeah, I feel like that's it. It wasn't Patrick Mahomes said that he hated his ugly, nappy, black hair. And he deserves to lose everything because of that. It was, how dare you disrespect your ancestry and your family history? How fucking dare you? In my spiritual practice, I practice hoodoo. My ancestors and my family are such a huge part of my life. Even though I have a lot of family members that I don't talk to, I got a lot of family members that I don't speak to. My ancestors, my passed over loved ones, they are incredibly important to me, and they're incredibly important in hoodoo. And I don't know if this is true across ATRs or African traditional religions, but in hoodoo, your ancestors are like the center of your practice. Everything starts with your ancestors. That's the first place that you go. And so in hoodoo, there's a lot of different roles and there's a lot of different ways that you can practice. One of the ways that I practice, one of the ways that I am called to practice, is as a historian. This is why I'm always telling you on my podcast stories about my family history. This is why I am always learning and talking about Black history, Black American history. Because when I'm having a conversation about the ancestors, I'm not just talking about my ancestors that I am related to by blood. I'm talking about everyone who came before me. I would consider Ernie Barnes to be an ancestor. I would consider Whitney Houston to be an ancestor. I would consider Reverend Shuttlesworth to be an ancestor. I would consider Nathaniel Turner to be an ancestor. I would consider Harriet Tubman to be an ancestor. And so these are all spirits that can be worked with and connected with and venerated, and relationships can be built with them, and their knowledge and their understanding and their wisdom and their gifts and all of these things can support us. And so there's power in that. And that's a really big part of my spiritual practice. Your history, your ancestry is so important. Because in order to understand where you are now, you have to understand where you come from. And you know I have to hit you with the Kamala Harris. Do you think you fell out of a coconut tree? You exist within the context of all that has come before you. If I want to understand why I am in the situation that I am as a Black woman in my family line, as a Black woman living in America in 2024, if I want to understand why I am where I am now, if I want to understand why my people are where they are now, I need to have a deep understanding. I need to have a thorough understanding of what happened and exactly how we got here. That's history. That's the study of our past. That's record keeping. These things are incredibly important. And when you are a Black person who is practicing anti-Blackness, you are cutting yourself off from your history and from the context of who you are. And so it's sacrilege, it's blasphemous, it's incredibly disrespectful to be anti-Black when you are a Black person. Of course, I don't think anybody should be anti-Black, but we're talking about self-hatred. Do I believe that Patrick Mahomes is having the greatest life he could possibly fucking have? Absolutely not. Because the brother practices self-hatred. He is living the negative experience of what happens when you don't love yourself. Now, listen, we live in a hyper-masculine society. So you might think he's got a skinny, blonde-haired, blue-eyed wife, and he has money, and he is well known. How could he possibly be losing? I see that answer, and I see that hyper-masculine observation, and I raise you one of the funniest clips of all fucking time. He sat in an interview with his wife. What's your favorite cheat day meal? What's your husband's favorite cheat day meal? And she says, she says, fried chicken. He's like, no, that's not it. Try again. She says, I think watermelon. I'm just kidding. I don't know what she said afterwards. He says, no, it's Mexican food. And let's just pause for a minute for dramatic effect and just let that sink in. favorite cheat day meal. She said, what's the blackest shit I can think of? And this is your wife? This is the person that you are married to till death do you part? This is, well, everybody has different ideas of marriage, but for me, I would imagine that you would be married to your soulmate. I would imagine that you would be married to someone who you would consider to be your other half. I would imagine that you would have a great amount of intimacy and closeness. I could not imagine not knowing what kind of food my husband likes to eat. I could not imagine not knowing the kind of food that my husband likes to eat. What do these people talk about? What is your relationship built on? And then, of course, they have their children, bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. I don't really know how many children they have, and I don't really know what their names are, but I do know that they are basically named medals, aka trophies. You think he's living the fucking dream? I think his nappy hair is the last of his problems. He doesn't even have a for anything curl pattern nappy hair. Oh, that burns me up. So when I have the conversation about your anti-blackness will come to bite you in the ass, your self-hatred will come to bite you in the ass every single time. Patrick Mahomes might not be living back in his hometown, broke as a fucking joke. But is he living an emotionally fulfilled life? Why don't we let the live studio audience decide? Is he being punished because he's doing something wrong? No, he's living out the natural consequences of his life experience. And to quote Monique, when you do clownery, the clown comes back to bite. When you perpetuate and practice anti-blackness, the anti-blackness will come back to bite. When you perpetuate your own self-hatred, when you move in the world as somebody who hates themselves, you will create a life not full of love, not full of fulfillment, not full of joy, but of, I have the kind of wife that everybody tells me I'm supposed to have. And she knows me so well that she's not even in the right fucking cultural cuisine family of my favorite meal. And that's the woman that I sleep next to every single night. I'm living the dream. You know what, Patrick Mahomes? You're not my enemy anymore. And I forgive you. Because now I actually feel really sad for you. I actually feel really sad for him. I've actually just described my nightmare. I'm sorry. Patrick Mahomes, I forgive you. I forgive you. And I forgive your nappy hair. And I'm actually really sorry for you, because that actually sounds like a nightmare. That actually sounds really terrible. That's actually my biggest fear. Anyway. So, okay, boom. There's that. If I was a black ancestor and I saw my descendant being anti-black and showing his ass and consequently co-creating a reality where he was absolutely miserable, would I be satisfied? Yes. Are there layers to this? Sometimes will your ancestors let some negative shit show up for you and happen in your life? Yes, for a multitude of reasons. Sometimes you need the negative experience because it inspires your growth. Sometimes you need the negative experience because it's the wake-up call that is the catalyst that propels you towards your destiny. We don't have to run from negative experiences. However, I don't want to tell that story that says I have to be terrified to make a mistake. If I don't listen and I don't do what my spirit guides tell me to do, then I'm going to have a terrible life. There's more depth that's required there, because take it back to the example that I gave in the last episode. It was of this woman. She was basically saying, like, I was seeing this guy that I didn't have any business seeing, and when he left my apartment, something terrible happened, and I knew it was because I needed to leave him alone, and my spirit guides were whooping my ass, basically. The reason why that does not work, the reason why I have a problem with that particular way of thinking or being or existing, is because that's not teaching. That's not healing. That's not parenting. And so your spirit guides, they're a support system, and your ancestors, they're a support system, and they should be, your spirit team should be a source of love and guidance and support and care and help for you. I don't believe that anybody learns by being hit. I don't believe in hitting children. I don't believe in beating children. I just don't believe in that at all, especially because ties and connections to slavery. Why the fuck would I perpetuate that barbaric shit? That's insane. Physically, I haven't been on a plantation in hundreds of years, but the ways of being, the psychological and physical and sexual torture that took place over the course of hundreds of years, generations of my family, I'm going to perpetuate that today. I don't need the white man to do it. I'm going to do it for him. The devil is a liar and a deceiver. So no, I don't believe in hitting children. I would never do that. But I do believe in teaching them and educating them, because that's like being a parent, nurturing people, right? Being in a relationship with someone that is unhealthy for you, being in a relationship that is hurting you, somebody hitting you and saying, leave him alone, that's not going to heal you. And that's the problem that I have with punishment. Not the pain, not the hurt feelings, not the whatever. There's nothing that's being taught there. You do something I don't like, and now I'm going to hurt you. That's not teaching. That's not nurturing. That's not loving. That's not parenting. And so that's also not going to help you grow. As your spirit guide, as your ancestor, as your support system, I don't want you to just leave that man alone, because of course I don't want you to be hurt. Of course I don't want you to be abused. Of course I don't want you to have a negative experience. I don't just want you to leave that man alone. I want you to be safe. I want you to be secure. I want you to be in an emotionally fulfilling love. I want you to be happy. I want you to be satisfied. I want you to be satiated. Me kicking your ass does not help you get closer to satiation. It addresses a symptom, not the root cause, not the problem. So what's going to happen? I whipped your ass. You left the guy alone. Now, your vibration hasn't changed. You haven't healed from your past experiences. You haven't told a new story romantically. So what's going to happen? You're going to find another guy. And how is that guy going to treat you? And what kind of experience are you going to have with that guy? Surprise, spoiler alert. You're going to have the same exact experience with that next guy as you did with the guy before you, because I focused on whooping your ass and I didn't focus on helping you heal your abandonment wounds. I focused on hurting you from making a mistake which was a normal, natural consequence of your lived and inherited experience, right? I beat your ass because you made a mistake. I didn't help you heal from your past. I didn't help you stop telling the story that men are going to abandon you. I didn't help you stop telling the story that men are unsafe. I didn't help you shift and release the expectation that men will bring chaos into your life. I didn't help you shift the belief that men are emotionally unavailable. I didn't help you do shit. I just whooped your ass. All that work, and what did it get me? Why did I do it? Do I think that your spirit guides, angels, and ancestors are watching you in the heavens and the higher dimensions and saying, oh, he doesn't know it yet, but I'm going to whoop his ass? No, I don't. Because they have a higher perspective. And so a couple of episodes ago, when I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes and I'm talking about the things that I would do as an ancestor, I'm saying I would be upset and I would be pissed off. Now let's talk about the difference between ancestors and spirit guides. Your ancestors and your spirit guides are different. In the spiritual realms, there are different energies and there are different entities, and they all exist. Maybe we could say on different planes, but I see it as different dimensions. So, for example, the physical reality that we live in is the third dimension. People talk about the fifth dimension. That's 2 dimensions above this physical 3D reality. And so the fifth dimension is where your manifestations live. If you follow Abraham Hicks, which is a collective consciousness channeled through Esther Hicks, then you would know that the fifth dimension is where your vortex lives. And the vortex is basically how do I describe the vortex? The vortex is basically, we can say, a plane of existence where all of your desires live. So when you want a new car, your car is in your vortex. When you want to move to a new apartment, your apartment is in your vortex. When you want to get married, your marriage is in your vortex. Your vortex is like your potential. Your vortex is everything that's possible for you in this lifetime. And so every single thing that you want, every single desire that you have is sitting in your vortex. It's sitting in the fifth dimension. And as you in the third dimension deliberately think new thoughts and build out a new belief system, as you in this physical reality in the third dimension deliberately raise your vibration, then you become a vibrational match to the good shit inside of your vortex. And as you become a vibrational match to the good shit inside of your vortex, then it begins to manifest in the physical reality. The things from the fifth dimension begin to manifest into the third dimensional reality. Your vortex is always growing and expanding. You're always adding more things into the vortex. Life on the leading edge of creation is you desiring a whole bunch of stuff, that stuff manifesting in the vortex, manifesting in the fifth dimension, you allowing yourself to receive that really awesome stuff, and then you desiring more stuff, and more stuff gets added into the vortex, and then you allow yourself to receive that stuff, and then you add more stuff is in the vortex, and then you allow yourself to receive, right? So that's the basic idea of manifestation. So when it comes to your ancestors, when I think about ancestors, I don't think about ancestors being on a specific dimension. I'm sure somebody out there can tell you what dimension and blah, blah, blah. I don't think about it. I just think of like my ancestors in the afterlife, my ancestors in the spirit world, and the spirit world and the afterlife in that context would just be another dimension. Seventh dimension, ninth dimension, 11th dimension. I don't fucking know. I don't care. It's just another dimension. So you have your ancestors who are on another dimension, and your ancestors they're very close to being human, versus your spirit guides, which are on a higher dimension. So as you go up dimensions, as you continue to rise up dimensions, you basically get higher and higher and higher vibrational beings. And so the higher up you go, you basically keep going until you get to God, until you get to source energy, which is the source of all things, the creator of the universe, the creator of life, the creator of the galaxy, the creator of the world, the creator of all things, right? The I am. As you get higher and higher up dimensions, your consciousness expands greater and greater. And this is good, but we don't all want to be at the highest level of consciousness, because at the highest level of consciousness, you are source energy. And source energy, God, is the I am. I am everything. I am nothing. I am, right? And what I mean by this is the higher you get up spiritually, the farther you get from being a human. And as a human being, you have a very concentrated perspective. Source energy in that high vibration understands I am everything and everything is me. Source energy, God, sees himself in the atomic particles in oxygen. God, I am, also sees himself in me as a human being. God, I am, also sees himself in the cinnamon broomstick on my door. God, I am, also sees themselves as the posters on my wall. God, I am is my house. God, I am is everything. Source energy is everything. And so there's no boundaries. There's no differentiating. As you continue to rise up in dimensions, things get less and less defined. Versus being a human being. I'm not just a human being, I am a Black woman. I'm not just a Black woman, I'm a fat Black woman. I'm not just a fat Black woman, I am a fat Black woman living in California, living in the United States, living in the year 2025, who has had hundreds and thousands of years and evolution and all of these, family experiences that have all come together to create her personality. That is a very niche, very specific, very focused perspective that I have. I perceive myself as being separate from my walls in my house. I perceive myself as being separate from the car in the driveway. I perceive myself as being separate from my parents. I perceive myself as being a separate entity from multiple other things. And because of that perception, I'm able to interact with the world around me, which is so awesome. I love living in the third dimension. I love being a human being. I love being myself. So your ancestors are closer to being human because they're your passed over loved ones. And so they still have the memory of what it was like to be human. I can connect with my passed on father. And one of the things that was happening, I don't know when, over like the past couple, weeks, maybe months, whatever, I'm having this thing where I'll be listening to like Kendrick Lamar. I was listening to the album GNX. I'm pretty sure it's GNX, right? Kendrick Lamar's latest album. And I'm listening to the song, Shit Gets Crazy, Scary, Spooky, Hilarious. And I'm listening to it and I'm like, R.I.P. Dad, you would have fucking loved this song, man. Like, you would have loved this song so bad, right? When I'm listening to this song and I'm venerating my ancestors and we're dancing and I'm singing and all of those things, in a way, they're experiencing that and they're understanding that, but it's not the same as being a human being and being able to put in headphones and listen and dance. I can give my ancestors food as an offering and they are able to receive energy and strength and all of these things from that offering, but it's not the same as being able to pull up a chair at a table and sit and literally taste the collard greens on your tongue. Are you understanding what I'm saying? So they can understand and they can empathize with what it's like to be a human being. As you continue to rise up in dimensions, certain spirit guides do not have that same understanding or remembrance. And so from a higher perspective, they're going to respond to things differently. They're going to feel about things differently. The example that I can give is years ago, I worked with a coach and she told a story about why she stopped working with her spirit guides for a really long time because they broke trust with her. Basically, she was dating this guy and her spirit guides told her that he would be the one for her. And the relationship ended up, excuse me, I had to yawn, I'm tired. The relationship ended up not working out. And when the relationship ended, she went back to her spirit guide. She's like, what the fuck? You told me he was the one. You told me we were going to get married. Why would you say that we were going to get married if we were not going to get married? And her spirit guides basically said to her, well, you had a really strong probability of marrying him. It was very likely that you were going to marry him. So that's why we told you that you were going to marry him. Oh, well, you didn't marry him, sucks, you know? And so there was a really big break in trust between her and her spirit guides. And it was in that moment that she had an understanding that, like, spirit guides don't have the same relationship that human beings have with truth. And she developed this understanding that basically sometimes your spirit guides will lie to you if they know that it's going to help you get to the end result. Because your spirit guides are not human, they don't experience emotions. Your emotions are what makes you human. The reason why I am so fucking adamant about feeling your feelings and being sensitive and not being a fucking robot is because this is what you came here for. Do not listen to the hyper masculine bullshit way of being that says you are weak for feeling or you should not feel or you should not be sensitive. You literally came here to feel. Higher dimensional beings do not have the capacity to feel. They do not have the capacity to taste food. They do not have the capacity to feel sadness. They do not have the capacity to feel joy. They do not have the capacity to feel fear. They don't have the capacity to feel. They do not feel. You are a human being. You get to feel. And I believe that taking advantage of life on earth means feeling everything, even the negative emotions, especially the positive emotions. I cry thinking about traveling the world and experiencing the best that this life has to offer. the concept of experiencing, seeing, and feeling the vibration and the energy and the power of a volcano in real life, not just the volcano in and of itself, but having that knowing and understanding that this volcano has been formed over however many millions of fucking years it has taken, an evolution. And oh my God, I love this physical plane. I love being alive. Oh, how I love being alive. I believe in relishing in that. There's power in that. Having your own personal perspective, being your own person, being your own individual. Higher vibrational beings don't have that capacity. Higher vibrational beings don't see things in the same way. So I'm not saying that your spirit guides are lying to you and all of that stuff. That's not really, I don't know. I don't really connect with my spirit guides a lot. Like, they're there. If I need them for something, we'll talk, but I mostly connect with my ancestors just because they understand so much about being a human being. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not saying that your spirit guides are lying to you. I'm just saying they have a different perspective. So the higher that you go up in spirituality, the less individual it becomes. The more it becomes about the macrocosm. And so the macrocosm is, I need to get you down this path for the greater good of all humanity. I need to get you down this path for your soul's evolution and blah, blah, blah. And that's my role as your spirit guide. So I'm going to say what I need to say and I'm going to blah, blah, blah to get you down this path. It might hurt. It's fine. Negative emotions happen, right? But it's different being on the outside, having that higher perspective, saying, yeah, negative emotions suck, versus being the human being and having to deal with the abandonment and the heartbreak and the break of trust and all of those things. That is uniquely human. My ancestors might observe me experiencing a heartbreak or observe me experiencing a betrayal. But they might be there to soothe me, but they're not like, oh my God, I can't believe this fucking happened, because they have a higher perspective. They saw it happening. They could see a couple steps ahead. Well, yes, of course that's going to happen. Yes, of course he's going to do that because he's dealing with this and this and this. Yes, of course he's going to show up in that way. Yes, of course he's going to respond in that way. Yes, of course he's going to do that with that woman and blah, 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 blah. That just makes sense. I can see that happening. And of course she's going to feel that. And of course she's going to respond in that way. Right? They're not surprised because they can see us from a higher perspective. So there's that experience and understanding. And then like the higher that you go up, the less focused and niche it becomes. So this is why there are spiritual bypassy people who will say things like, we are all a part of one race, the human race. And it's like, that's true. We are more similar than we are different. That's true. I don't see color. That's true. When you go higher and higher and higher, you start connecting deeper and deeper and deeper with the I am. Just because it's true that we're all a part of one human race, just because it's true that we all have so many more similarities than we have differences, does not mean that that higher perspective is the right perspective, or that that higher perspective is the perspective that we are supposed to have. Right? We are living in the third dimensional reality for a reason. We are here to have a human experience. And a part of having a human experience is having ancestry and having your ancestry impact you. A part of being human is having a past and having that past impact you. Your decisions and your perspective and your personality, your gifts, your talents, and your skills. And there's value in that. And so when you are just connecting with your spirit guides, they might not have that same understanding because they don't have that same perspective, because they don't know what it's like to be a human being. They don't know what it's like to have a culture that means something to you and is important to you. They can't empathize in that way. They just see, let's grow, let's expand, let's create world peace or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they say. So the point is that different spirits respond in different ways. Different energies, different entities, different dimensional beings are going to hold a different perspective, and they're going to have different intentions, and they're going to have different desires. My ancestors are going to have a very specific and powerful response to racism and oppression and my goals and desires for liberation and equity. They have an understanding of what it was like to be human and what it was like to be enslaved and what it was like to navigate the world, quote unquote, post-slavery. We have a deep, great, powerful bond and connection because they are a part of the driving force that pushes me forward. This is my purpose. It's very much connected to my identity. And can my spirit guides help me with that? Sure. But I'm just not at a place in my journey where I'm really asking them for a lot of support. So I can't even talk a lot about that experience. So that's what I mean when I say things are contradicting. They're not all black and white. It's not the entirety of the spirit world is holding this one perspective. Because there's multiple dimensions. There's multiple different perspectives. There's multiple ways of seeing things. There's multiple ways of understanding things. God, I am, understands that they are everything and everything is it. God, I am, loves you unconditionally. God, I am is universal fucking oneness. But just because you're unconditionally loved and accepted by God, does that mean you should be able to be a terrible human being to your fellow man and not experience the consequences of those actions? Of course not, right? So there's multiple different perspectives available, and it can get contradictory. And what I've really learned about spirituality is sometimes you just accept it. Sometimes it just is what it is. And that's kind of like the higher vibrational, right? It is what it is. We think about time. We're kind of getting into a place that sometimes thinking about it makes me feel like existential. We think about time as there being a beginning and an end. The beginning of time, the end of time. The beginning of the universe, the end of the universe. My current understanding is that the universe just is. We just are. I personally believe the theory that sounds the best to me is that our universe is constantly beginning and ending, non-fucking stop, over and over and over again, forever and ever and ever. And I hate thinking about this. It makes me sick to my stomach. I hate thinking about this. I like just being a human being. And that's what I mean. I like having my human perspective. I like staying in my own lane because, of course, to higher dimensional beings and to God and to I am, that doesn't create anxiety and that doesn't create stress and that doesn't create all of these things. As a human being, that's not really my lane. I don't really need to be thinking about the end of the fucking universe. I don't need to be thinking about that. I need to be here enjoying life and having delicious fucking food and feeling my emotions and feeling love and feeling connection, you know? Higher vibrational beings might not know what it's like to experience pain and abandonment, but they don't know what it's like to experience finding your soulmate. They don't know what it's like to experience connecting with someone and things just feeling right. They don't know what it's like to experience seeing a vision of something, having a desire for something, and playing around with the manifestation of that, like in your imagination, and it just feeling right. Just knowing that something is your right next step, knowing that something is where you're meant to be, knowing that someone is who you're meant to be with. They don't know what that's like, and I don't know what it's like to be them, and everybody has their own lane, and everybody has their own thing, and I think that that's okay. And I think that I'm willing to accept that. I'm willing to accept that there are certain things about life and the meaning of life that I don't know, and that maybe I'll never understand, but that there's so much beauty in this present moment. I don't want to get so high up that I lose who I am, because that's what happens. You get so high up that you lose who you are, because you are nothing. You are a part of everything. And as you come down into that third dimensional reality, you get to be you, who you are, where you come from, with your family history, with your romantic history, with your beliefs and your desires and your values. And so when it comes to my children and it comes to my descendants, I don't ever want them to lose the things that make us us. And that's our family history. And that's our country's history. I believe those are things that deserve to be and need to be honored and gatekept, protected, preserved. And that's why Patrick Mahomes offends me greatly. Because he is a representation of the opposite of what I stand for. Not wanting to be who he is, or from where he's from, or from the culture that he's from, or from the race that he comes from, and not honoring that history, not loving oneself, rejecting oneself, hating oneself. I hate that. I think that ancestors are powerful, and because they're connected to, because they're more closely connected to life on Earth, do they have the capacity to behave humanly in a way that a spirit guide wouldn't? Yes. As an ancestor, if my descendants were doing some fuck shit, would they experience negative consequences? Yes. From me and from life. You don't create an emotionally fulfilling life by hating yourself. This is just true. Would I, on the other side, be giving life a helping hand? Yes. But that's because I would still be humanish, humanoid, human-like, human by proxy, human adjacent. Our spirits, our ancestral spirits, are human adjacent. As you get higher and higher and higher and higher, they become less human. And for me, it's kind of harder to connect with less human. It's not bad, it's not wrong. It's just more difficult to connect. So your spirit guides might be having a different perspective. Your spirit guides might not care. Your spirit guides might be like, well, he's living out the negative consequences. He hates himself. It is what it is. Here's how I can help. As an ancestor who's human adjacent, I would feel towards that. I would feel something towards that, right? My ancestors who are human adjacent, I can feel the pride that they have towards me and the work that I do. So they might not be able to taste and touch and feel in the same ways. But they do have certain levels of feeling. They don't have a physical body, so if they're feeling something towards me, they might not be crying and feeling that pain in their chest, right? But they can still feel and they can still empathize in a certain way. As you continue to go up dimensions, you lose the ability to feel. Okay? Did that make sense? I'm sure that it did. I feel like this was like a really good conversation. I didn't plan on having this conversation, but I was just thinking about it, and I was like, I kind of contradicted myself. I said, your spirit guides were never going to punish you. But then I said, I'd fuck Patrick Mahomes up. So, yes, to both of those. I agree with both of them. I recorded a whole podcast episode to say, even when I contradict myself, I'm still right. Okay, I love you. Thank you for listening. I hope you're enjoying season 4. I'll talk to you again in the next episode. I'm going to go to bed now.